He's here, and you know what that means.
Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Ryan O'Neill.
Means we're joined by Alfred University political science professor emeritus Dr. Bob Heineman.
For a few moments of insightful analysis. Right.
Yeah, so many good questions I have for you today.
Ooh.
Let's start out with the race for the Kathy Young seat.
Yes. Yeah, you want me to
start out with that.
You'd like me to talk about that?
Well, you had that introductory video, I guess I'd call it, by
oh yeah,
Chautauqua County Republican George Borrello, and then I know that Kurt Crandall's campaigning in Allegheny County. What's the latest?
Well, there are a couple points on this election I think should clear up. The time has passed for the governor to be able to call a special election for the June 25th primary. So it appears, frankly, that he won't call a special election at all. I don't know why he would when everybody is moving toward the June 25th primary now. What's really interesting about that, and is, I guess I should back off. We talked to our audience before. If the governor calls a special election, then the 4 county chairs meet and they designate who would be their candidate. And Mr. Borrello, of course, tried to put together a meeting of the county chairs 6 weeks ago or whatever, kind of on the QT, although Mr. Crandall got wind of it, and tried to get the endorsement right there, apparently thinking or claiming that there was going to be a special election called. Now, I don't know whether that was a ploy on his part or whether Flanagan convinced him that...
and when you say his, you're talking about George Borrello.
George Borrello, or whether Mr. Flanagan, leader of what's left of the Republicans in the state Senate and signer of the SAFE Act and persecutor of Kathy Young, sort of designated Mr. Borrello to be the candidate and maybe convinced him there was going to be a special election. Now, well, clearly there hasn't been a special election. Mr. Borrello's been going around telling everybody there would be. Now, he may genuinely believe that. I don't know. Could have been a ploy on his part. Could have been he thought that that's what, but apparently it's not going to happen. And as we know, Mr. Flanagan's minority whip, and when you're talking minority whip, we're talking serious minority whip at this point, called our county chair and said, we don't want a primary, we want Crandall out of the race. But that has not happened. Mr. Crandall went into that meeting, told him he didn't want anything to do with it. He was going to run and take the issue to the voters, and that's where we are now. Mr. Crandall is on the ballot, and Mr. Borrello is too. And so it does look like we'll have a primary on June 25th. And basically the voters of the 57th District can decide who they want representing them, which I think is the fair way to approach it.
Dr. Bob, Flanagan's not making a lot of news out of Albany. I mean, you talk about this issue and how Flanagan favors George Borrello, the Chautauqua County Republican executive. But Flanagan, you don't hear his name a lot in Albany news stories. You don't read about him on Liz Benjamin websites or hear about it on Spectrum News or Capital Tonight.
Well, I think basically he's going to disappear. There aren't enough Republicans left. Literally, 2 phone booths, and you could put them all in there. He's out of the picture. And you know what I always found interesting was these guys, especially in the Assembly, coming back here, the Republicans, when you had only well, at one point you may have had 45 or 46 out of 150 assemblymen who were Republicans, and trying to impress people that, you know, they're doing something fairly important. Now, some of them are very nice people, don't get me wrong there, but they're lucky to get paper clips up there. So Mr. Flanagan is, apparently Ed Cox was on the Liz Benjamin show a week or so ago, basically saying, well, we have a candidate out there in the 57th District, Mr. Borrello. He seems like a very decent fellow, etc. apparently he had been led to believe, again, I think by Flanagan.
Ed Cox, the state Republican chairman, was led to believe this by Flanagan?
That's my view. In any case, he made a statement to that effect on Liz Benjamin, and we called him. Mr. Crandall called him and left a message, and son of a gun, Ed called him back the next day and said, gee, I wasn't aware that there wasn't unanimity here. I didn't realize that we had another candidate here. Had a very nice conversation, and so you can see kind of what the people in Albany and Long Island are trying to foist off onto for the folks out here in the 57th district. And again, I like Ed Cox a lot. Don't get me wrong, but his success rate here hasn't been outstanding by any means. I've never met Flanagan. I have no idea what kind of person he is, but I do know that he's enraged. Several people told me he's just enraged that Crandall is on the ballot and that there's a primary. I guess it's because he feels that someone is challenging what little authority he has left. I don't know.
Not a pretty picture, Dr. Robert
Not
Heineman.
pretty at all. No, it's time we took some of this authority in our own hands and made some decisions.
So you really are pointing the finger at John Flanagan for torpedoing things for Senator Young?
Yes,
and the picture
absolutely.
you paint of Albany without Senator Young is not a very nice one.
No, that's for sure. And no, there's no question about it. He stripped her of all her major committee assignments, and he doesn't want anybody, I think, running for that spot who had any connection with Kathy Young. And of course, Kurt Crandall's connections with Kathy Young go back years and years and years, so they've worked together on many projects over the years.
One more state issue, if we could. Governor Cuomo signed an executive order this week, Dr. Bob, going over the Assembly's head so that Gold Star family members, the children of soldiers wounded or killed in action, could get free SUNY college tuition. And one of the leading all our upstate Republicans were putting pressure on that. Nicole Malliotakis, the congressional candidate in downstate New York, Staten Island Republican, Staten Island member of the state assembly, was going on the Tucker Carlson show on Fox News and more than once pointing out how ridiculous it is that they were giving free college to illegals and not to free college to the children of Gold Star family members. So Nicole Malliotakis may have been a big influence in this whole thing.
Well, it's quite possible, right. I wouldn't want him to do anything that makes good sense up there in Albany. I mean,
Dr. Bob, moving on to national.
Yes.
Let's talk, first off, you say that the Mueller investigation pretty much had a contrived nature.
Well, I think the whole thing is contrived, as it turns out. And what we're doing now is, I think you have some people, this guy Nadler in the House, who is hell-bent to come up with some sort of impeachment against the president.
What's up with that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
It's a little obsessive on his part.
You think so?
A tiny bit.
Yeah. And I don't think Pelosi wants much to do with it, frankly. But now that the Mueller report's come out and basically shown that there wasn't any collusion with the Russians, I mean, you had 2 years, $25 million, and a lot of these attorneys working for Mueller had previously worked for the Obama and Clinton administrations. They're not gung-ho Republican activists by any means. So you would think that would be the end of it. And that's whole rumors and such about the Russian collusion turns out to be pretty much false. But that's not enough. They have to continue with this kind of contrived situation, and the press feeds into that, of course, very heavily as well. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is made up. And the Democrats, the zealots among the Democrats there, are going to continue to claim that, I guess, obstruction of justice is going to be their claim. But again, I don't know certainly the Attorney General and the Mueller people didn't find any basis for any kind of criminal obstruction of justice. I don't know if there's a crime called attempted obstruction of justice. I don't know. I don't know if there's a crime called obstruction of justice.
Well, some of the conservative commentators are saying just because Trump vented to certain people within the administration,
exactly,
doesn't make it obstruction.
Not by any means.
And just because he said, "I wish so and so would go away," or "I wish so and so would get fired," that doesn't make it obstruction.
Yeah, he's obviously pretty frustrated, and it's hard to blame him. So, anyway, that's all I have to say on that.
Before we move on, though, I read what Congressman Tom Reed's statement?
Well, sure. See what...
The Mueller report was released. The result remains the same. No Russian collusion. And this is the interesting part. We have to end this culture of division and work together on policies to help people. Imagine that.
Oh, yeah, goodness. Well, talk about the culture of division here. I think there are a couple of points that need to be touched on. One, the press, you continually see the press saying that Trump is basically continuing to play to his base. That instead of reaching out with, I guess, more progressive ideas, I don't know, he is playing with the basic principles that got him elected, and he's playing with the basic portions of the electorate that he appeals to. I think we got to give that a little broader interpretation there, because I think basically the Democrats are building this base for Trump even better than Trump is doing it himself. So that to be a white working class male voter today, you can look at the Democrat Party and say to yourself, I don't think there's a spot for me there anymore. And Trump is certainly making all kinds of spots in terms of jobs and other things for this very kind of voter. So the idea that Trump is continuing to play to his base, I think if I were Trump, I certainly wouldn't. And the Democrats basically are building his base even better.
Can I say
it's
something
incredible.
there?
Are you going to interrupt me again here? Yeah.
That statement that Trump is playing to his base, does that not really mean that the establishment hates it that Trump won and hates the voters because of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He's
a real disdain.
The guy's
there.
an unbelievable threat to the establishment as it's been for the last 50, 60 years, maybe longer. And the people he's talking to understand that, and they like it. They like it. So I say more power to you, Donald.
I have a question. How is it that he's gotten anything done? You know, we hear all these reports from about unemployment and the job numbers. How is it he gets any regulations cut to improve things?
Well, he can cut
with all these investigations.
Yeah, well, he obviously has some people around him that, frankly, are pretty capable people. There are one or two I got some questions about, no question about that. But somebody's doing the job there, and the one job they're doing, lickety-split, is cutting back on these regulations. And that he and the agencies can do, I think, pretty much without any interference by Congress. And they certainly have cut back on a lot of regulations. And a lot of very good things are being done. Despite the Democrats in the House of Representatives doing everything they can to impede him. And at the same time, you look at what Mitch McConnell's doing to the federal judiciary, and he's packing that with conservatives left and right. So they're getting things done, and these things clearly threaten, I think, the establishment. It was kind of interesting on on C-SPAN the other night. I was watching Andrea Mitchell and two or three other, a woman by the name of Kelly, and a couple of guys who were apparently involved. They're reporters, have pods and things of that sort on national security, and they are, I guess, respected commentators on the national security apparatus. But the more you sat there and the more you listened to them, the more it became obvious that they're just parasites on the whole agency effort. So they call the agency, they try to get feedback from the agencies, etc. And that's what Trump is saying. Hey, hold it just a minute. This sort of thing's got to come to an end.
When you say they're parasites on the agency, who is a parasite on
these reporters.
Yes, thank you. I think you just stumbled onto a great point. You know, Tucker Carlson.
What do you mean stumbled? I thought on this quite a bit.
Did I say stumbled onto a great point? That sounds like KPD, doesn't it? We should take a break back after this.
The Ryan Agencies, your local, independent insurance agencies. The Ryan Agency is not beholden to any one insurance company. They work with many companies, offering unbiased insurance advice. Their interest is seeking your best interest. Contact the Ryan Agencies. Good people offering unbiased advice, seeking your best interest.
Insurance protection you can rely on. The Ryan Agency.
Stumbled onto a great point. Dr. Robert Heineman makes quite a few great points on every show. That's why we have him here. Dr. Bob,
yes.
If we could get back to that point, though, Tucker Carlson said, and I started to say this, we knew we have to go to a break. Tucker Carlson said that a lot of the reporters who've been covering Capitol Hill are new to the media, that they were sociology majors who somehow, a bunch of them ended up in the journalism field, and they were not trained for this, and Tucker sort of implies they were first-year types, freshman types, taken advantage of by the establishment people, whining and dining them and getting them to gang up on Trump.
Well, that could well be. I don't know. By the way, let me recommend Tucker Carlson's book, Ship of Fools. I'm almost through with it. I mean, it is devastating, as you might expect. But there's no question that today's reporters find it a lot easier to just walk down the street or go to a reception or something of that sort and pick up a little news that way, as opposed to go out and really digging on their own. And that's why Philip Howard, again, who has a recent book called Try Common Sense, suggests that maybe we should move some of these agencies out of Washington, D.C., and let the reporters maybe move somewhere else.
If I was a communications professor or a journalism professor, which is never going to happen, but if I was, I would warn all first-year journalists on the job that you're going to get wined and dined by these people who want to make you their spokesman.
Right. Oh, yeah. No, and, and again, Trump has found that very difficult to deal with. But at any rate, we got to talk about Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
You feel the burn there, do you?
Well, what do you make of that? He had a town hall this week on Fox News with Brett Baer and Martha McCallum. And it was, as it's been pointed out, not the most watched thing ever, but the most watched town hall with a politician in recent years.
Yeah. Well, Fox has a big audience out there, my man. And, but what's really interesting here is that Bernie is beginning to send ripples of fear throughout the Democrat establishment. He's raised a huge amount of money. And interesting article in the New York Times this week in which they pointed out that, the Clinton people still hate Bernie Sanders, and the Sanders people still hate the Clinton people, because the Clinton people, Bernie made his point. They really, what's her name? The woman was chair of the Democrat National Committee.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz?
Yeah, right. Clearly oriented the whole thing against Bernie to cut him down. And at one of the town meetings, one of Bernie's people asked Hillary, why did you support the Iraq War? Did you support it or didn't you? Are you going to support it? Are you? And, she was totally equivocal on that, and they've hated him ever since. So you've got a big section of the Democrat Party that simply do not want to see Bernie Sanders as their nominee. But again, that populist element seems to be reaching out. Well, you've got some real populists running loose there in the House of Representatives these days anyway.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Well, and the rest of the minions following her there. Bernie appeals to him. Now, the problem with Bernie is, of course, I don't think he's ever administered anything. And second, he is a socialist. There's no two ways about it. His view is that government should provide everything for everybody, and we'll worry about how we pay for it. He's well-intentioned. I don't deny him that, and we know what he stands for. But I don't think America really fits what he's offering there. On the other hand, he clearly, he's clearly got some support, and he's got to be given a lot of Democrats some real concern.
Dr. Bob, I have to say, Mr. Kellyanne Conway, also known as George Conway, weighed in on the Mueller thing, saying,
"Oh, good.
Why didn't Attorney General Barr share the Mueller report information last month? When does this guy go away?"
I don't know. I don't know the man. I just have tremendous sympathy for Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah, that husband is just why. Do you have any thoughts on why Trump keeps her on with the husband undermining?
Because I think she's very good. No, I don't think there's any two ways about that. I think she's very good, and Trump's not going to let her go. What you do about her husband, I don't know. And of course, the press is always there.
Like Conway's an important person.
Yeah, right. Pick up anything they can there to embarrass the president. But it's sad, really. And
if the situation was in reverse, if Hillary Clinton had been president, or let's say when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, if Bill Clinton had been doing the undermining nonstop to Hillary Clinton, the Democrats would be saying, "How can you do this to a woman?" Yeah.
Well, I think Bill Clinton was taking plenty of advantage of Hillary's position, Secretary of State. He wasn't going to. He was raising money and hooking himself into all kinds of nice, soft financial deals.
That can't be true, Doc. That can't be true.
He's not going to kill the goose that laid the golden egg, buddy.
I hear you.
No. Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, Brian, yes.
And I want to thank you for coming in. I can't believe I said you stumbled onto...
You're probably on...
I must have been listening to some archives recently, because that's how he used to talk to you.
Expressing the views of a lot of our listening audience. And I wish him a happy Easter. That's what I...
Happy Easter, Doc. Thanks for stopping by.
Okay.